Millionaire CEO took his twin daughters on a blind date with a black woman. He pretended to be broke, but everything changed when she... "I'm sorry, but you can't come in here with those children," said the restaurant hostess, looking disdainfully at the man in faded jeans holding two 5-year-old girls. "This is a fine establishment, not a playground." Marcus Williams, 38, never imagined he would be barred from entering a restaurant he had frequented for years. Of course, now without his $3,000 suit and private driver, he was just another single father trying to take his daughters out to dinner. "I have a reservation," he replied calmly, adjusting Sophia on his left arm while Emma held his free hand. "Table for 4 under the name Williams." The woman frowned, clearly annoyed. "Sir, I need you to understand that our customers expect a proper environment. Perhaps you'd be better off looking for a more family-friendly place." Marcus smiled in a way that made the receptionist feel inexplicably uncomfortable. It was the kind of smile powerful people used when they knew something you didn't. "Can you check the reservation, please?" That's when she appeared. Kesha Thompson walked across the parking lot, checking the address on her cell phone for the third time. A 32-year-old criminal lawyer, she had reluctantly agreed to this blind date, pressured by her best friend, who insisted she needed to get out more and meet people. "With 2 kids?" she had asked when she received the profile photo. "Seriously, Michelle, a broke single dad is exactly what I need in my life right now." But there she was watching a black man being clearly discriminated against at the entrance of one of the most expensive restaurants in town. And something inside her boiled over. "Excuse me," Kesha said, approaching with steady steps. "Is there a problem here?" The hostess turned quickly, assessing the elegant dress and confident posture of the newcomer. "Oh, you must be his date. I was explaining that it would be better to find a more appropriate place for children." "Appropriate?" Kesha raised an eyebrow. "You mean a place where black families feel welcome?" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus watched, fascinated as this woman he barely knew decided to fight a battle that wasn't even hers. "I didn't say that," the receptionist stammered. "You didn't have to," Kesha replied, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. "You know I'm a lawyer, right? And that establishments like this can lose their license for discrimination." It was at that moment that Marcus realized something extraordinary. Kesha wasn't defending a rich man in disguise. She was defending a black father with 2 daughters, period. She didn't know about his fortune, his company, anything. And yet, she had chosen to stand by him. "You know what?" Marcus said, picking up the girls. "My date is right. Let's find a place where we're actually welcome." Kesha looked at him, surprised by the calmness in his voice. There was something in those eyes she couldn't quite place. It was as if he was seeing the whole situation from a completely different perspective. "Do you know a good place for kids?" he asked, smiling in a way that made her heart skip a beat. "I know the perfect place," Kesha replied. "And you can be sure we'll be treated like people there." As they walked across the parking lot, Marcus watched Kesha chatting animatedly with Sophia and Emma, who had already fallen in love with a lawyer lady who had defended their dad. What Kesha didn't know was that she had just passed the most important test of her life. And what Marcus didn't realize was that this woman was about to turn his world upside down in a way that all the money in the world couldn't buy. If you're enjoying this story of how a man decided to test people's true character, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because what happened next will leave you speechless. The Happy Family Diner was the complete opposite of the previous restaurant. Formica tables, plastic menus, and the smell of hamburgers in the air. Kesha watched Marcus help the girls up onto the high chairs, noticing how he made a point of wiping down each surface before they sat down. "Sorry about that," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Not exactly what you expected for a first date." "Actually," Kesha smiled, "I prefer it this way. At least here people won't judge us by the color of our skin." Marcus stopped cleaning the table and looked directly at her. There was something in those eyes she couldn't quite figure out, as if he were constantly evaluating, measuring reactions. "Does this happen a lot?" Kesha asked softly. "More than you can imagine," Marcus replied, but his voice carried a weight that went beyond simple resignation. "Sophia, Emma, what do you want to eat?" While the girls debated between nuggets and French fries, Kesha watched Marcus more closely. His jeans were simple, but the watch on his wrist, which he quickly covered with his sleeve, seemed too expensive for someone who was broke. Something didn't add up. "What do you do?" she asked, pretending to be casual. Marcus hesitated for a split second. "Consulting. Nothing too interesting. And you?" "My friend said you're a lawyer, criminal. I mainly defend cases of racial discrimination and social injustice." Kesha noticed how his eyes lit up with genuine interest. "I believe that everyone deserves a chance to defend themselves no matter who they are." "Even when they have money?" Marcus asked as if testing something. "Especially when they have money," Kesha replied without hesitation. "Rich people can be victims, too. Prejudice doesn't choose based on bank accounts." That's when Sophia spilled juice on Kesha's blouse. While Marcus quickly got up to ask for napkins, Kesha simply laughed and started cleaning the girl up. "Don't worry, Dad," said Emma, holding Kesha's hand. "The lawyer lady won't leave like the others." The silence that followed was revealing. Marcus returned with the napkins, but Kesha had already noticed the pain that crossed his face. "The others?" she asked gently. Marcus sighed, sitting down again. "It's hard to find someone who will take the whole package. Single dad, 2 daughters, complicated life. Most disappear when they realize it's not just fun and games." "What about their mother?" "She died 3 years ago. Cancer." His voice grew quieter. "I've been doing everything on my own since then." Kesha felt her chest tighten. She looked at the girls who were now drawing on napkins and understood why Marcus always seemed on guard. He wasn't just protecting himself. He was protecting the hearts of 2 children who had already lost so much. "It must be hard to trust people," she said. "You have no idea." Marcus looked out the window. "Some people only get close when they think you have something to offer. Others disappear when they find out that real life is more complicated than an app profile." "And how do you tell the difference?" Marcus smiled in a way that made Kesha feel like she was being tested. "By watching how they react when things get tough. When a kid spills juice, when a waiter is rude. When someone like that receptionist shows her true colors." "And I passed the test." Kesha raised an eyebrow. "You're still taking it," Marcus replied. But there was something warm in his voice. Their conversation was interrupted when Marcus' cell phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Sorry, I have to take this. It's work." Kesha watched as he walked away to talk, noticing how his posture changed completely from relaxed dad to something more authoritative. His words were sharp, decisive. "No, cancel the meeting with Johnson and Associates." "Yes, I said cancel. I don't care what they think." When he returned, Kesha pretended she hadn't heard anything, but her lawyer's mind was processing information. Johnson and Associates was one of the largest corporate law firms in the city. What kind of consultant canceled meetings with them like that so casually? "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just a few clients who think they can buy my time any time," Marcus replied, putting his phone away. Kesha nodded. But something wasn't adding up. The man in front of her talked about financial difficulties, but he canceled meetings with multi-million-dollar companies as if it were his choice. He wore simple clothes, but there was a confidence in his movements that only came with real power. "Marcus," she said slowly, "can I ask you a strange question?" He tensed slightly. "Of course. You're testing me, aren't you?" The smile he gave her was answer enough. It was neither denial nor confirmation, but the acknowledgement that she had noticed something that other people hadn't. Everyone tests everyone, Kesha. The question is, what kind of person are you when you think no one important is watching? She laughed, shaking her head. "You're interesting, Marcus Williams. Much more complex than you let on." "And you," he replied, watching her cut Emma's food without being asked, "are exactly who you seem to be, and that's rarer than you know." At that moment, as Kesha helped 2 girls she barely knew and talked to a man who clearly had secrets, she had no idea she was about to discover that her definitions of rich and poor, power, and vulnerability were completely wrong. Every new humiliation Marcus had faced over the years only strengthened something inside him that his oppressors couldn't see. A quiet determination to find genuine people in a world full of masks. And Kesha was about to discover that she had passed the most important test of her life. 3 weeks had passed since that first meeting, and Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Genuine hope. Kesha had agreed to see him again, and more importantly, she had begun to become a natural part of the girls' lives without forcing anything. But Marcus still hadn't revealed who he really was, and for a very specific reason. "Daddy, why don't you tell Aunt Kesha about your real job?" Sophia asked as he helped her with her homework in the modest apartment he had rented specifically to keep up the charade. "Because first I need to make sure she likes us the way we are now, Princess," Marcus replied, carefully storing his real documents in a hidden safe. What Kesha didn't know was that every one of their dates was being meticulously documented. Not out of obsession, but out of necessity. Marcus had learned the hard way that people could change dramatically when they found out about his fortune. His late wife Caroline had been betrayed by her own sister, who tried to manipulate her will while she was in the hospital. Friends of decades had disappeared or become self-serving, and 3 subsequent ex-girlfriends had tried to use the girls as a bridge to his money. So Marcus had developed a system: discreetly record public encounters, document genuine reactions, and maintain a false persona long enough to get to know a person's true character. It was his way of protecting himself. But with Kesha, something was different, and it both thrilled and terrified him. "Marcus, are you okay?" Kesha asked, noticing his distraction as they walked through the park with the girls. "You seem preoccupied." "Just thinking about work," he lied, watching as she automatically caught Emma's hand when the little girl stumbled. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Sometimes it helps to talk." Marcus almost laughed at the irony. How could he explain that he was planning a complete overhaul of his company's corporate structure to implement stricter anti-discrimination policies, inspired directly by the conversations they had had? "Actually," he said, stopping walking, "there's something I want to show you." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of the restaurant where they had been discriminated against. "Remember that place? How could I forget?" Kesha frowned. "Why?" "They were sued yesterday for racial discrimination. It seems that several people filed formal complaints after a security video was leaked showing how they treated a black family at the entrance." Kesha looked at him surprised. "Really? How did you find out?" Marcus hesitated. The truth was that he had been responsible for initiating the entire investigation, using his legal contacts to review the establishment's practices. But he couldn't tell her that yet. "A lawyer friend told me," he said, which was technically true. "Apparently, they're going to have to pay a hefty fine and provide mandatory training for all employees." "That's good," Kesha said. But Marcus noticed something in her expression. "Marcus, can I ask you a direct question?" He tensed. "Sure. You have more money than you say you do, don't you?" Marcus's heart stopped. "Why do you ask?" "Because you have the confidence of someone who has never really worried about money. Because you canceled a meeting with Johnson and Associates as if you were the one calling the shots. And because," she smiled sadly, "no broke consultant gets inside information about legal proceedings that quickly." Marcus looked at the girls who were chasing butterflies a few yards ahead. It was the moment of truth, but something inside him still resisted. "What if I did?" he asked carefully. "Would it change anything?" "Honestly, yes," Kesha replied, and Marcus' heart sank. "It would change things because it would mean you've been lying to me for weeks, and lying is the one thing I can't forgive." Just then, Marcus' cell phone rang. It was David Chun, his legal director and best friend since college, the only person who knew about his social experiment with Kesha. "Sorry, I have to take this," Marcus said, stepping away. "Marcus, we have a problem," David said without preamble. "Someone found out about your meetings with the lawyer. They have photos and they know you didn't tell her who you are." "Who?" "Your sister-in-law, Patricia. She's threatening to leak everything to the press. She says you're disrespecting Caroline's memory and that the girls deserve proper protection from opportunists." Marcus closed his eyes. Patricia, Caroline's younger sister, had become a toxic presence in his life since his wife's death. She believed that the girls should be raised by her in an appropriate environment and that Marcus was incapable of making the right decisions about his own life. "She wants a meeting tomorrow at the office with you and your girlfriend," David continued. "She said if you don't show up, she'll go public with a story that the inconsolable widowed CEO is cheating on an innocent woman." Marcus glanced at Kesha, who was watching the girls with a genuine smile. She had no idea of the storm that was about to break over them. "David, I need you to prepare some documents for me. It's time to show Patricia that she's picked the wrong person to threaten." "What are you planning?" "She wants a meeting. She'll get one, but it won't be what she expects." Marcus hung up and returned to Kesha, who was now helping Emma draw on the floor with colored chalk. "Is everything okay?" she asked, noticing his serious expression. "Kesha," Marcus said, kneeling beside her, "tomorrow you're going to find out some things about me that could change everything between us. And before that happens, I need you to know that every moment we've spent together has been real. Every conversation, every laugh from the girls, every time you stood up for me, all of it has been the most genuine thing that's happened in my life in years." She looked him in the eyes, seeing something there that made her swallow hard. "Marcus, you're scaring me. Just promise me one thing. When you find out who I really am, remember who I was here with you and the girls. Because that man, the clumsy father, the guy who spills sauce on his shirt, the one who needs your strength to face the world, that's the real me." At that moment, as Kesha held his hand without fully understanding what was happening, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Not just about revealing his identity, but about how he would deal with people like Patricia forever. For years, he had allowed others to control the narrative of his life. Tomorrow, that would end, and Kesha would discover that the man she was falling in love with had far more power to protect her than she could ever imagine. The next morning, Kesha stood in front of one of the most imposing buildings in the city. The Westwood Corporate Center was 40 stories of glass and steel with a company name engraved in gold letters at the main entrance. "Are you sure this is the place?" she asked the doorman, showing him the address Marcus had sent her. 38 Executive Suite, the man replied, pressing the elevator button. "Miss, you're on Mr. Westwood's guest list." Kesha's stomach churned. Mr. Westwood. The company had Marcus' last name, but that didn't mean, did it? The elevator doors opened into a luxurious reception area. Sophia and Emma were sitting in leather armchairs drawing in expensive coloring books. When they saw Kesha, they ran to hug her. "Aunt Kesha! Daddy said you were coming to see our special office today." Emma shouted, holding her hand. "Special office?" Kesha asked. But before she could process the answer, a blonde woman in her 40s approached with firm steps. "You must be the famous girlfriend," Patricia Sterling said with a venomous smile. "I'm Patricia, Marcus' sister-in-law, sister of the late Caroline." Kesha felt the hostility immediately. "Nice to meet you." "Oh, I'm sure you are," Patricia laughed coldly, "especially considering you have no idea who you're really dating." That was when the double mahogany doors swung open. Marcus appeared, but this time there was nothing modest about his appearance. Impeccable suit, authoritative posture, and behind him, two people who were clearly lawyers carrying briefcases. "Kesha," Marcus said, his voice echoing differently in that environment. "Thank you for coming." "Marcus, what's going on?" Kesha looked around, finally connecting the dots. "This is his office." "Actually," said Patricia, crossing her arms, "this is the family business. Marcus is the president and CEO of Westwood Enterprises. It's worth about $200 million, a detail he forgot to mention during his romantic adventures." The silence that followed was deafening. Kesha looked at Marcus, searching his eyes for denial. She found none. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice coming out lower than she intended. Marcus sighed. "Yes. And there's a lot more you need to know." Patricia smiled triumphantly. "I'll make this simple for you, sweetheart. Marcus here has a habit of testing women by pretending to be poor. You were just another guinea pig in his social experiments. And now that the game is over, it's time for you to go back to your normal life and leave a real family alone." "Patricia, you've crossed the line," Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone Kesha had never heard before. Authoritative. Dangerous. "I crossed the line." Patricia laughed. "You're exposing your daughters to some stranger just because she was nice to you. Caroline must be turning in her grave." That was the last straw. Marcus turned to David Chun, who had remained silent until then. "David, can you begin?" David opened one of the folders and took out a stack of documents. "Miss Sterling, 3 years ago after your sister's death, you began a systematic campaign to question Marcus' ability as a father and as the company's administrator. Patricia paled slightly. I was protecting my family. In fact, David continued, you were trying to obtain custody of the girls and control of the company. We have recordings of her conversations with various lawyers discussing strategies to prove Marcus' mental instability. David activated a tape recorder. Patricia's voice echoed through the room. He's clearly depressed. 2 small children accompanied to run. It's only a matter of time before he makes a serious mistake. When that happens, I'll be ready. That's been taken out of context, Patricia protested. We also have, David continued relentlessly, emails from you to the press trying to sell information about Marcus' personal life, including photographs taken illegally of the girls at school. Marcus approached Patricia, who was now visibly shaking. You threatened to expose my relationship with Kesha as if it were something shameful. As if a black, intelligent, successful woman were unsuitable for my family. I didn't say that. We have recordings, Patricia. Your conversations with journalists where you question Kesha's suitability for our social class, where you suggest she's only interested in the money. Kesha watched in shock. Marcus had systematically documented all of Patricia's attacks, not just to protect himself, but to protect anyone he chose to love. And now, Marcus continued, we come to the most interesting part. David pulled out another set of documents. Yes. Sterling, we have discovered that you have been illegally accessing company bank accounts using passwords you obtained from Marcus' personal computer. Over the past 2 years, you have embezzled approximately $500. Patricia staggered. That's a lie. We have the bank records. Transfers to an account in your name. Credit card bills showing expenditures inconsistent with your stated income. Marcus moved closer. You weren't protecting the family, Patricia. You were stealing from her. Patricia's mask of superiority finally fell. Tears of anger and despair welled up in her eyes. You can't do this to me. I'm family. Family doesn't blackmail. Family doesn't steal. And family definitely doesn't try to destroy innocent people's happiness out of pure prejudice. Marcus turned to Kesha, who was silently processing everything. Kesha, I know I lied about who I was, and I understand if that changes everything between us, but I want you to know that every moment we spent together was real. And all of this, he gestured to the documents, was to protect not only me and the girls, but you as well. Kesha looked at Patricia, who was now crying uncontrollably, then at Marcus, and finally at Sophia and Emma, who were watching everything without fully understanding, but knowing that Daddy was protecting someone they loved. You documented everything, Kesha said slowly. Every threat, every attempt at manipulation. I learned that against people like Patricia, you need irrefutable proof. David addressed Patricia one last time. Mrs. Sterling, you have 2 options. Sign these documents agreeing to return the stolen money, accept a permanent restraining order, and quietly leave this family's life. Or we take this to court where everything will become public, including the criminal charges for embezzlement. Patricia signed the documents with trembling hands, her arrogance completely destroyed. When she left the room, she was a broken woman who had lost not only the money, but any chance of maintaining contact with her nieces. As the doors closed behind Patricia, a heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus had just systematically demolished someone who threatened him using nothing but documented truth and his own strategic patience. But the question hanging in the air was more complex than any legal victory. Would it be possible to rebuild trust after so many secrets have been revealed at once? Kesha remained silent for several minutes, watching Sophia and Emma play on the rug as if nothing had happened. Marcus waited, respecting her process. You tested me, she finally said, but you also protected yourself. And more importantly, you protected your daughters from people like Patricia. Marcus nodded. I've learned that fortune attracts masks. I wanted to know your true heart. And me? Kesha smiled sadly. Did I pass the test? You defended a black stranger at the entrance to a restaurant. You paid our bill without hesitation. You loved my daughters before you even knew my full name. Marcus approached her. You didn't pass the test, Kesha. You completely redefined what I expected to find. 2 months later, Marcus and Kesha were in the same restaurant where they had been discriminated against, but this time they were the owners. Marcus had bought the establishment, completely renovated it, and appointed Kesha as the legal director of the new anti-discrimination policy. "Mr. Williams," said the former receptionist, now unemployed, begging for a chance. "Please, I need the job." Kesha looked at Marcus, who just smiled. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said. "But here, we treat every customer like family, regardless of their appearance or bank account." Patricia had lost everything, her money, her reputation, and any chance of contact with her nieces. She now lived in a modest apartment, working as a receptionist, learning the hard way what it meant to be judged by appearances. "Daddy," said Emma, drawing on the table at the renovated restaurant. "Is Aunt Kesha going to live with us forever?" Marcus looked at Kesha, who proudly wore the engagement ring they had chosen together. "Forever, princess." "You know," said Kesha, watching families of all colors dining happily around them. "I've discovered that true wealth isn't what you have, but the character you reveal when no one is looking." Marcus smiled, kissing her forehead. "And I've discovered that true love can't be bought, tested, or forced. It just happens when you find someone who loves your essence, not your possessions." Justice had been served. Patricia learned that prejudice and greed come at a high price. Marcus discovered that honesty builds solid foundations. And Kesha proved that standing up for what's right is worth more than any fortune. The best revenge against prejudice is not to return hatred. It's to build a world where love conquers discrimination, where character trumps bank accounts, and where families are formed through choice, not obligation. If this story touched you and showed you that true value lies in people's hearts, subscribe to the channel for more stories.